Hey everybody, ABC 10 meteorologist Brenden Mincheff here. It's another weekend, time for another drought update, but first, the seasons are changing, and that was evidenced by the weather that we had on this Sunday. We made it to 71 degrees downtown Sacramento. That was the warmest day we've had since October 30th, when we were 77 degrees, and the average first 70-degree day in downtown over the last 30 years, 1990 to 2022, was actually when we recorded this video on that Sunday, February 12th. So we had our first 70-degree day right on time. Not going to stick around, though, the short term, but long term, the pattern is definitely changing. We're obviously moving from winter into spring, and as you would expect, those average highs are trending up. So about 62 degrees on February 13th. That's the average high downtown Sacramento. By the end of February, it'll be about 65 degrees. First couple of weeks of March will be 67 degrees for an average high temperature. By the end of March, 69 degrees. In April 10th, our average high temperature in downtown Sacramento will be in the 70s, 72 degrees. So over the next roughly month, about a couple months, we're going to warm up into the 70s for our average highs. So if you're not a big fan of the cold, we're almost done with the cold. Not a whole lot of that left. Taking a look at the drought, we had another change since the last time we did this, and that's some good news. We've actually changed for the better. So still less than 1% of the state is in no drought at all, but the abnormally dry category has increased 14.76% of the state. Much of that increase happened right here in the central and southern Sierra and then in towards the San Joaquin Valley just a little bit. Severe drought category still at 32.62%. That's that darker orange, but the moderate drought, that's where most of that most of where the state is at nearly 52%. That's that lighter tan color. So Sacramento still in that severe drought, one level above the moderate. But the good news is that extreme drought and that exceptional drought still not looking at any of it across the state of California. Here's what the map looked like last week. And again, that central Sierra region into the San Joaquin Valley, that's where we had all that change with the latest update, and you can see that here. It's in that yellow color this week. So the drought score this week, 217. Last week it was 221, so it is an improvement. The lower the number, the better. So again, doing better on the drought. Still adding a little bit of rain and a little bit of snow to our totals, but for the most part, downtown Sacramento hasn't really seen much of a change. 0.3 of an inch so far this month. The average to date is about an inch more than that, so we are below average for the month. But as for the season, from October 1st to September 30th, we're doing pretty good. Still 7 inches above where we normally are. We've seen over 18.5 inches of rain. The average to date is only 11.5 inches. So again, above average. That's good news so far. Rest of the state still doing pretty good. We haven't seen a whole lot of rain since the last time we did this update, so these numbers really have not changed much. Palm Springs and Eureka back below where they normally should be for this time in the water year, but everywhere else still in the blue. That's good. Redding about an inch above where they normally are through this point in the year. South Lake Tahoe about 9.5 inches. Sacramento 7 inches to the good. San Francisco 9.5 inches to the good. So we're doing okay in terms of water. Of course, we don't want that tap to be shut off for too long. We still have a couple months left in the rainy season, so we still want to make sure that we're getting as much water as we can so that we can bank it for the dry months. In terms of snowfall, we have seen some more snow, and in fact, we've seen a decent amount of snow so far this month. February snowfall totals: Homewood 33 inches, Boreal 26 inches, Sugar Bowl 25 inches of snow just this February. Palisades, Tahoe 23 inches of snow, same in Kirkwood. So looking at those numbers as the percent of the season average. This is not season to date. This is for the whole season. We're doing really well. So 380 inches of snow has fallen at Homewood this season. That is 99% of what they normally see. Boreal also doing very good. 89% of their average snowpack. 88% average snowpack at Sugar Bowl. 85% Palisades, Tahoe. 96% at Kirkwood with over 400 inches of snow this season. 403 inches is the latest number from Kirkwood. So our snowpack is actually doing pretty well, and we're almost where we normally are through this point. Not only through this point in the water year, but for the season as a whole. With those percentages in the upper 80s, even those 90% ranges, we only have another 5 to 10% to go for much of the Sierra in terms of reaching average in terms of snowfall. So when we're talking about snowpack, that percent of April 1st average, no surprise, from the northern to southern Sierra, all above 100%. Again, not a surprise because we are above average. That percent of April 1st average, that's good news. Not for the season as a whole in terms of snowpack, but by April 1st, where that snowpack is typically the greatest, we're above that 100% mark. That's good news. To date, that number is coming down as we get closer to April. That makes sense, but our April 1st averages, that's the number to watch, and we are still doing very well there. Statewide, 196% snowpack to date. the percent of April 1st average. Again, the most important number, 136%. In terms of our reservoirs, still doing pretty good. Oroville is at 68% capacity, 114% of the average today. Even Shasta is now above 50% capacity, and they're actually at 86% of the average to date. That is good news. Shasta has really filled up over the last roughly month or so. Folsom, 53% capacity, average today just above 100%. But again, Folsom's mainly used for flood control. They do keep some water in there for the drier months, but the really important ones, Trinity, Shasta, Oroville, we're making some progress on all of those. So again, that is some welcome news. Taking a closer look at Shasta, this thicker blue line is the average, and that lighter blue line, the thinner blue line, this one right here, that is where it is right now. So you can see just how much water we added really just in the month of January alone, and that number still continues to tick up, still below average. Again, we're 86% of that average to date, but still that is in a much better spot than where we were when we ended the calendar year 2022. So good news with Shasta. All right, this week we're talking about trees yet again, not really about fire this time, but still trees, really important. So the results from the 2022 aerial survey that the U.S. Forest Service does, where they go around much of the state of California, everywhere that's kind of colored in here, the gray area, or the browner color, not somewhere that they surveyed, but the higher elevations right along the coast, certainly the Sierra, that's where they surveyed. What they found was not good news. Over 30 million trees died, at least in this year when they went to do the survey. So between the 2021 survey and the 2022 survey, over 30 million trees died. And a lot of those happened in the Sierra, and especially right here in the Central Sierra. That's kind of our neck of the woods, if you will. And they found a lot of reasons for that, but really it all ties back to drought. We talk a lot about drought. We talk about it every single week here, and it impacts a lot of different things. One of those things is the trees. It weakens the trees, makes them more susceptible to things like insects and diseases, and frankly, they need water. So when there's not enough water, they're struggling, they're stressed, and that makes them more vulnerable. So I went straight to the source. I talked to somebody from the U.S. Forest Service who was a big part of this study, and he said that these numbers are very concerning, and he doesn't expect to see them change, actually, because it takes time. Even though we've seen a lot of waterfall this year, the numbers that they're going to see when they go out and do the survey again later this year, those are going to be trees that have died from the calendar year 2022 into 2023, because again, it takes time for trees to die and it takes time for them to recover. So that number, that 30 million trees plus that we saw die this year, we might be in for another bad year. Let's talk to him. Let's hear what he has to say.
It's a type of survey that's been done for a long time here in the Western U.S. that we created this system of two people getting up in a small airplane, looking out opposite sides through the window at a fairly low altitude, and then recording. Well, today we recorded on touch tablets, smart mobile devices, where we see elevated levels of tree mortality or damage. It can be kind of boring sometimes. Other times it's just you're overloaded and you're trying to keep up and like you can't. So that's kind of what this last year was more like.
The 2022 U.S. Forest Service Aerial Detection Survey found a number that is truly astonishing. 36.3 million dead trees in the state of California.
But this is the second highest. 216 was the highest. This last year, 2022, is the second highest ever reported in California history by the survey.
As we're well aware of, 2022 was the third straight year of drought. And we're also well aware that drought has wide-ranging impacts, and our forests are no exception.
Drought allows the beetles to be very successful in colonizing a given host. They then reproduce, and their populations grow dramatically. So that even if we were to get out of this drought this year, which we may, there's still a lot of beetles out there on the landscape, which are still going to kill a lot of trees.
So even though drought was the underlying reason, the actual cause of death can vary. For instance, stressed trees are more vulnerable to insects and diseases, which can cause high rates of mortality in the populations. And some of those trees with the highest mortality, they occurred right here in our neck of the woods.
But there was a lot of mortality. The drought was the worst in the Central Sierras, where we saw so much true fir mortality, as well as in the North Interior, where we have some of our biggest Douglas fir components in some of our forests. So it was in that area that the Douglas fir was really dying off. They tend to like riparian areas, and they're pretty much like to surround water bodies, whether it's a reservoir or a natural body water or a moving river. And when that water is not available to them, then they die off pretty readily.
It's important to note that the survey does not take into account trees killed by fire. Still, fire has a little something to do with it.
We're looking at what's being killed by biological agents, insects, and diseases for the most part. When a fire comes through, it's not always the same. Sometimes there's good fires. Sometimes they don't kill all the trees. They leave a lot of good, healthy trees behind. And in those situations, the forest will be much healthier. But in other situations, those guys can go up like Roman candles, and they can carry the fire up into the overstory, and that just obliterates everything. Everything is, it's a big moonscape up there sometimes. See it from here.
Work to make our forests more hardy and resistant to both drought effects and fire has recently gotten a big boost. The Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law set aside nearly $500 million for many landscapes across the West, including here in California.
We got some extra funding this year from the infrastructure bill. We have several projects on the table right now waiting to go forward that are forest health oriented. Millions and millions of acres need to be fixed, and we can't do all of that right away, not by a long stretch. So we're trying to prioritize around where people live, people travel, infrastructure, that sort of stuff.